Good evening, everyone. This is Dr. Wanda Simmons Clemens, and I'd like to welcome you to our metabolic wellness series that we'll be doing on Thursday evenings at from 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I love this, that you all are joining in with me. I didn't advertise it as much, but I think we'll get more and more people as time goes on, and I just thank God for the opportunity to be able to serve you in this capacity. So I just wanted you to know that the purpose of this metabolic wellness series is for you. It's to give you education and for you to learn about metabolic health issues, its impact on our overall wellness, and to discuss personal health challenges and explore strategies for improvement. The goal is to develop self-advocacy skills to help support our health journey and that of our community. I'm hoping that we can collaborate together to create actionable plans for healthier lifestyles. So I really look forward to working with you all, hearing what you have to say, hearing about your struggles. I've had mine. God's been faithful, though. He's really shown me some very, very pragmatic, instrumental things going forward. And hopefully I'll have opportunity to share those things with you as well. So this series is being sponsored by the Mid-Paraclete. Your health is within reach. Mid-Paraclete is an organization that promotes health and wellness for the individual, for families, communities, healthcare institutions, and we seek to change the way people think about their health. We promote advocacy, education, empowerment, but faith. I think there's a lot of information out here today, and it's all good. It's wonderful, but it's coming from the knowledge of the tree of good and evil. And God has a mind and a way for us to handle our health, to handle every problem that we face. And he says in the word of God in Proverbs, there is a way that seems right unto a man, but the ways there are of death. And so sometimes something might look good, might feel good, everybody's doing it, but it's not necessarily the thing we're supposed to do. And so one of the things that's very important to us in the Mid-Paraclete is that we get our clients to a place where they are interacting on a real intimate level with the Spirit of God and being led in health choices and decisions that they're making for their own lives. And I hope that as you continue to listen to what I'm saying and how important it is and how vital it is and how God just wants to have intimacy with us. He doesn't want to hide his will from our lives. He says in Psalm 25:12, who is the man who fears the Lord? Him will I show how to choose. So as we continue on, being mindful and just prayerful and just in a space where we can allow the Holy Spirit to speak to us as we are learning, getting the good information, but just like, okay, how does it apply to my life? How am I going to do this? What does this look like, Lord? Like talking to the Spirit and having him fine tune and direct us into what it is that we are doing here. For his honor, for his glory, but to give us the help that he wants us to have. In 3 John 2, it says, Brethren, I wish that you would be in good health as your soul prospers. Wow, that's a whole another talk for another day. But today we're going to get into understanding metabolic disease and insulin resistance. So just today, since this is an introductory session, I guess I'll call it that, what we're going to focus on today are definitions and just an overview of metabolic disease. So we're all on the same page about what we're actually talking about. And specifically, I want to talk about the role of insulin resistance as it relates to chronic health conditions that we're dealing with here in the United States, as well as globally. So before we begin, I want to take a poll. Now, which of the following conditions do you think is most associated with metabolic disease? Type 2 diabetes, heart disease, obesity, none of the above. Don't put it in the chat yet. Just hold on till you think about that and maybe write it down on a piece of paper. And we're going to come to that a little bit later, and we'll get your responses. Okay. So metabolic disease is like a slow moving storm, like a tornado inside your body. It's a condition that develops over time when the body's metabolism, which is how we process and use energy, when that starts to malfunction. When we think about our metabolism, it's like an engine is a good metaphor for it, because if we put fuel in the car, we give it the right fuel, and there are different grades of fuel. There's the regular, medium, and then high test. And if you put regular gasoline in a car that requires high test, it's not going to function well. And it's the same with our body. When everything is working right, this engine is running smoothly. It's turning the foods that we eat into the necessary energy that we need to live, move, and think. That reminded me of a word of scripture. It says in Acts 17:28a, in him we live, and move, and have our being. I was like, okay, Holy Spirit, are you part of my metabolism? He said, absolutely. I was like, I know that's right. I know that's right. So when our bodies are running properly, the engine runs fine. But when it's not running properly, it's not able to efficiently utilize the fuels that we put in it. Like, it can't utilize our sugars properly. And by the way, sugar is not just table sugar, but it includes carbohydrates, high fiber foods. These all break down into sugar in our body. And body just, when it's not doing well, it doesn't digest them and utilize them properly. It won't do the same with our fats as well, and also as well with protein. So these are our building blocks. We need protein, we need fats, we need carbohydrates in order to live and be sustained. But when the machine isn't working, when our metabolism isn't working properly, then it turns into a full-blown fire. And that's what we call metabolic disease. It's like a fire in your body, okay? And it's, you say, well, what the heck is metabolic disease? We're going to go through all the things that are, all of the diseases that are a part that make up this metabolic family. But things like autoimmune disease, dementia, cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, all of these are a part of the metabolic disease family. So right now, I want to talk about the role of insulin resistance in chronic health conditions. Many of you may know, or maybe you don't know, that insulin resistance is at the heart of many of our metabolic diseases. So insulin is a hormone that is produced by the pancreas, and it helps us to use the body's sugars from carbohydrates in the food that we eat for energy and store it for future use. Sugar is the preferred fuel for our body. So we need sugar, but we need to have it be utilized efficiently and not have too much, because too much sugar left in the bloodstream will cause issues with glycosylation of our proteins and cause all kinds of havoc. So when I think about insulin, I think about it that it's a lock and a key. Insulin is the key that unlocks different metabolic pathways in our body. And I found this great visual here that I think helps to explain. Insulin goes into this receptor site. And when the key is turned or that gene is upregulated, it then allows a channel that's in that cell to open up and be able to receive that sugar into it. If it's not unlocked properly, the sugar will not be able to go into the cells. Or if there's too much, like the cell has its fill, it's like, okay, I'm done, I'm full, I can't take any more sugar. Then this closes off, and then the sugar again is still in the circulating in the body, and then it has to uh, be metabolized or stored in the liver. And that's another story. We're going to get into that a little bit. So insulin resistance and impaired glucose metabolism can lead to high blood sugars and the associated complications with that. I don't know if you're aware, but the diabetes, it's called diabetes type 2. It can affect your eyes, your brain, your heart, your vasculature. It can affect your nerves and cause neuropathy. And when the blood sugars are really, really high in the body and your cells are not able to actually utilize them properly, it can cause severe weight loss, coma. It can cause some really devastating things. So it's nothing to play with. And over time, it can again affect many different organs. And I don't know if I mentioned, but your kidney, the liver, the brain. We're going to talk about some of those complications a little bit later. Obesity, excessive fat accumulation often results from or contributes to metabolic syndrome and insulin resistance. This is like a whole, this is not even a one day, we can talk about it in an hour kind of thing, but more than 40% of our population is now in with a BMI of greater than 35 and considered obese. And worse than that, worse than the adult population is now our children are with really, really elevated BMIs and dealing with the consequences of insulin resistance at young ages. We're going to talk more about that on a separate lecture or session. Cardiovascular disease. Cardiovascular disease includes heart attack, stroke, high blood pressure, metabolic dysfunction, what we call peripheral vascular disease, which can, oh my goodness, it can affect the brain, the gut, the extremities, the heart. All of those are included in cardiovascular disease. And this is a metabolic disease. High blood pressure. High blood pressure is often linked to metabolic syndrome and other cardiovascular conditions. It's important to note that many of these diseases kind of run together. So not too commonly, it's not common at all to just find one isolated issue. Usually it might be you have diabetes, high blood pressure, obesity, all these things I'm about to continue to talk to you about. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. A lot of people don't realize this, but this is growing more and more in percentages of our population. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is where you have an accumulation of fat in your liver that is unrelated to alcohol consumption. And this has notoriously been associated with insulin resistance and obesity. Then there's non-alcoholic steatosis hepatitis, and this is just a more severe form of the non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. It causes severe inflammation and damage as well as scarring. Polycystic ovarian syndrome, again, metabolic disease associated with insulin resistance. It causes irregular periods, ovarian cysts, and for some women, infertility. And now metabolic syndrome. And that's a cluster of conditions: high blood pressure, excess sugar, body fat around the waist. It's a group of conditions that increase your risk of developing these serious other issues like heart disease and stroke and type 2 diabetes. And we diagnose metabolic syndrome when a person has at least three of several risk factors I'm about to mention. So one is a large waist circumference, also known as abdominal obesity, and that's a major risk factor. For women, if this waist circumference is more than 35 inches, and for men, if it's more than 40, it puts you at risk for metabolic syndrome. Elevated blood pressures of more than 130/80 or higher. Blood sugars that are impaired if you have impaired fasting glucose. So, blood glucose levels of less than 100 fasting blood glucose levels. If you have a fasting blood glucose level of greater than 120, you are considered diabetic. Elevated triglycerides of more than 150. So that can cause a problem, as well as low HDL, which is a level less than 40 for women. I'm sorry, for men, and less than 50 for women. So if you have low HDL, elevated triglycerides, elevated blood sugar, blood pressure, and a waist circumference of at least 35/40, you have metabolic syndrome. And it's really not difficult to find that out. You can look at your last labs you had done through your portal, your patient portal, or if you haven't had it done, then I encourage you to get it done, because ignorance is not bliss. You can't fight an enemy you don't know about. So you need to know. We need to know. We don't need to be, ostriches with our heads in the sand. No, we need to know. The first step in turning around this disease epidemic in our society, in our families, and us as individuals is finding out what exactly is the problem so that then we can fix it. Gout. How many of you knew that gout is a metabolic disease? It's caused by the accumulation of uric acid crystals in the joint. And I want to get into that. This is so important, but I did want to just put a few things out there. Most people think it's usually, I guess, gout's usually been called like a rich man's illness, because drinking wine, beer, red meats increase your uric acid production. But even healthy things like spinach can increase your uric acid production. So it's not just those things. Most people may or may not know that if you have a uric acid level greater than 6, then you're at an increased risk of developing gout. But it doesn't have to be 6. It can be less than that. And so it's a really individualized thing based upon how your body metabolizes purines. And so it's important to be checked. The other thing I wanted to say is that we normally think of gout as being a part of, it's in the foot or the leg or whatever, but you can develop gouty stones or uric acid stones, I should say, in your liver. And so they can be elevated uric acid levels can also lead to uric acid gallstone development. Chronic kidney disease, like who would have thought that, right? Chronic kidney disease. Um, Metabolic dysfunction can impact your kidneys, contributing to kidney damage and disease. And I'm going to have a whole session on that, on metabolic disease and how it affects your kidneys and how you can check and see where you are with your kidney function. One of the things that I noticed with my, let's go back. I'm losing my space here. Okay, Lord, help me out. I don't know how I did that. Let's get that back in order. One of the things that I've noticed is that many people are not aware of their kidney function. They'll say, oh, everything is good. And I'll say, well, what stage kidney are you in? And they don't know what that is. And so I want to just spend a whole session on talking about what that is. Stage 1, stage 2, all the way up to stage 5, which puts you at renal dialysis. Alzheimer's disease and other dementias. There is evidence that that suggests that insulin resistance plays a big role in, oh, I see what happened. Now I see what I just did. Okay, there we go. Plays a big role in cognitive decline. In fact, Alzheimer's disease is also called type 3 diabetes. And then we have various cancers that are also influenced by metabolic dysfunction. The most common ones that include colon cancer, endometrial cancer, breast cancer, pancreatic cancer, and prostate cancer. Did you know that sleep apnea, which is very often associated with obesity and metabolic syndrome, also impacts our overall metabolic health? Thyroid disease. Metabolic dysfunction can influence your thyroid function, contributing to conditions like hypothyroidism and hyperthyroidism. Autoimmune diseases. Some autoimmune conditions have been influenced by metabolic dysfunction, such as rheumatoid arthritis and systemic lupus erythematosus. There you go. So understanding insulin resistance is crucial because it's a major driver of many chronic conditions that affect millions of Americans worldwide. I'm saying Americans, but people worldwide. And the good news is that insulin resistance can be managed and even reversed with some correct lifestyle changes. So let's get back to our poll. Which of the following conditions do you think is most associated with metabolic disease? Type 2 diabetes, heart disease, obesity, none of the above. I guess I should have had a number 5 in there. Should have said all of the above. All of these things are associated, are very much so associated with metabolic disease. So I don't want to leave it on a low note. I think just talking about it and talking about how insulin resistance causes metabolic dysfunction in our body without giving us some takeaways. What can we do? What are the things that we can do to help decrease our likelihood of getting these diseases? And if we already have them, what can we do to help reverse them? So there are 7 things you can 7 steps I'm going to give you right now to help you avoid developing insulin resistance. So if you don't have insulin resistance now, or if you do, you can still do this, but if you don't have insulin resistance, maintain a healthy weight. That's number 1. Number 2, eat a balanced diet. Most people, or I should say most practitioners, we use a 80-30 rule, 80-20 rule, not 30, 80-20 rule, where just stay really good with your eating habits 80% of the time. Yes, you got to go to birthday parties and you're going to have cake and those different things, but don't make cake an everyday thing, or ice cream or cheesecake or chips. Eat a very balanced diet. Number 2, increase your physical activity. Some recent research has come out that has shown that walking 8K steps, 8,000 steps a day, increases your longevity, decreases your likelihood of developing metabolic disease, and helps to actually reverse it. Monitor your carbohydrate intake. We need carbohydrates. Our body needs that, but it's the type that we use. And choosing better carbs. What do I mean? Higher fiber carbs, which allow our body to have good digestion, help us to feel more full. That also help with our microbiome in our gut. Get adequate sleep. Okay, that's my thing. I don't get enough sleep. I'm still working on it, but I need to do better. Excuse me. I need to do better. I'm going to do better. I am doing better by the grace of God. Not getting enough sleep increases our cortisol levels in our body, and that in turn causes us to release sugar into our bloodstream, even if you're not eating. And did you know, even sometimes when you're fasting, if you don't fast properly, if you don't go into the fast properly and come out of the fast properly, that you literally jolt your adrenals and you can cause all kinds of havoc and worsen your issues with insulin resistance. So getting enough sleep is important. Managing your stress. We all have stress. We can either have good stress, we can have bad stress, but how do we manage it? How we manage it is what's going to be important. And last but not the least is staying hydrated. Staying hydrated is extremely important in being able to avoid the development of insulin resistance. So for those of us who may have had issues with insulin resistance, or you might say, okay, that's nice. You said balanced diet, blah, blah, blah. Let's get it down to some practical atomic steps we can take. Atomic habits. What are atomic habits? They're little habits that we do on a consistent basis that over the course of time will bring us a greater degree of improvement, whether it's in our reading, walking, our relationships, our diet. So these are things that I think are important. Plan weekly meals. I don't know about you, but when I don't plan, I plan to fail. In fact, I can say without a shadow of a doubt, when I have not planned my meals, dumb stuff happens. You'll find yourself somewhere and it's like, oh, you're so hungry, and you're like, okay, maybe I'll just fast and not, maybe I'll skip this meal, but it doesn't work out. It doesn't work out well at all. So planning the meals, and that includes planning your times when you're going to fast too. Like, as I said before, if you are fasting and you're not coming off a fast properly, or you're not going into the fast properly, it wreaks havoc in your body. Your adrenal glands go crazy. So planning weekly meals. Number 2, incorporating short walks. Some of the best time, or the best time I think to walk, is absolutely after you've eaten a meal. But dinner time, after dinner, going for a walk, or after your last meal or your biggest meal of the day, going for a walk will help to reduce the sugar load in your bloodstream, and will help you to avoid the development of insulin resistance and or reverse it if you have it. Number 3, track your food intake. You won't believe, this is for me, but when I've asked clients to do a food diary, they're in awe. They're in shock at what they ate, what it looked like. How did it get to be this? This is crazy. They just don't realize. And so one of the things that we recognize is that when we're not purposeful with our eating, which is down here, practice mindful eating habits. Like, don't be eating with the TV. It's fine eating with your family. You're talking, it's relaxed. Or with a friend, it's relaxed. But some of my physician friends will understand this. Sometimes you're running between patients and you don't have time to sit down and eat, and all of a sudden, like, you're doing food like this, go see a patient, or writing on a chart, or putting it in the computer now. Back in the day, we used to have to write on the charts. But doing that, and then getting used to, and it doesn't have to, I'm just because I'm a physician, that's in my mind. That's how my brain got used to eating. For a long time, it was, you only have like 10 minutes, like, you got to gulp this food down. Didn't enjoy the food, and I didn't give my brain a chance to receive signals to say you're full, or you need something else. And one of the key things that will happen to you if you actually just step back and be mindful about how you're eating, you will notice that even if you're being mindful about eating your chips or your ice cream or your cookies, which I don't encourage you to eat too much of, but what you'll notice is that your body will tell you, I'm hungry still because you didn't give me my nutrients that I needed. Whereas when you eat, a steak with veggies and maybe some quinoa on the side, or baked potato, there's a satisfaction, and it's important to become aware of that. The other thing that happens when you take the time to just not rush into eating is that you'll realize that, hey, I actually am not really hungry. I'm really thirsty. And so I need to drink some water, which I need to do right now. That was good. So practice mindful eating. The next one, set a regular sleep schedule. Now, I have a regular sleep schedule, but it seems like I'm gonna have to, there's certain days you can get to bed for 8:30, 9 o'clock, and then there's certain days that's just not gonna happen. And God will give grace. And that's, again, why I think it's important to just realize that, we all have a different life. We're in a different season of life. A mother of 3 children has a different sleep schedule than, the person who's on that 11 to 7 shift. It's totally different. Your body's dealing with it differently. And so you got to be mindful, but also like, okay, Lord, I want to sleep. What is it that I need to do? How do I need to do this? What are the things that are hindering me? Like, the Lord loves for us to ask him questions. Because guess what? He loves to answer. So setting a regular sleep schedule, incorporating strength training. So walking is good, and that's good for your heart and your lungs. But weight training, lifting weights and lifting those weights. Yeah. It helps to promote muscle buildup and to prevent muscle decline. As we get older, We can develop something called sarcopenia, which is loss of muscle from lack of stimulation. So it's important to incorporate strength training into our routine. That will also help us to decrease the likelihood of developing insulin resistance. And again, last but not least, hydrate with a purpose. You might say, what do you mean, Dr. Wanda? Hydrate with a purpose. Well, we are 70% water. If we don't give ourselves enough water, there is not enough fluid within our cells to perform all of the necessary functions that they need to do. It's like not giving the engine fuel. And I know I specifically was focusing on food, but water is one of the fuels that we give our body in order, or the lubricant, I should say, to help us to function. If we don't give it lubricant, it comes to a screeching halt. It can affect our kidneys, our eyes, our joints, how hard our heart has to work, how our skin looks, whether we're going to get wrinkly or not. Yes, water. For those of you who are princesses and queens and kings and want wonderful skin, drink water. So by implementing these steps and habits, you can significantly reduce your risk of insulin resistance and enhance your overall metabolic health. This video is presented by the Medical Paraclete. Your health is within reach.